How did the Dartford Standoff of 1452 begin on this biting March morning? The wind whips across the Brent as 10,000 men brace for the political maneuver that nearly ignited the Wars of the Roses 3 years early. Richard of York watches the horizon, his falcon banners snapping, while the royal host gathers 8 miles west. This concentration of steel turns a common grazing pasture into a bristling fortress. The arrival of heavy artillery signals that peaceful petition has ended. Why does a duke risk everything against his own king? Richard Plantagenet stands on the senior Mortimer line, leading a company of armored knights who believe his blood is purer than the House of Lancaster. He remembers the deposition of 1399, a ghost that haunts Henry's shaky throne and makes the crown feel like a political prize. As the king retreats into theology, the vacuum of leadership invites a martial challenge from the realm's richest subject. This dynastic friction transforms a personal grievance into a national crisis. What pushed the realm to the edge of catastrophe? The catastrophic loss of Normandy and the fall of Cherbourg have left England's martial honor in the mud. York blames the Duke of Somerset for this continental collapse, viewing his rival as an incompetent favorite who poisons the king's ear. While Somerset enjoys the warmth of the court, York's own pocket remains empty, owed thousands for his service in France. This financial exclusion convinces the Duke that the court party is plotting his total disinheritance. How does the memory of rebellion fuel this new fire? Only 2 years ago, the men of Kent followed Jack Cade and a banner of Mortimer to the gates of London. The subsequent harvest of heads left the county traumatized, yet the underlying fury against corrupt men-at-arms remains a potent weapon. York hopes to harness this populist undercurrent, positioning himself as the true lord who will restore justice to the common property holders. This lingering social volatility makes every step toward the capital a gamble on revolution. Where does the march toward confrontation truly begin? From his seat at Ludlow, York issues a public relations offensive, writing letters to every major town to justify his military mobilization. He swears his quarrel is not with the king, but with the evil advisors who have bankrupted the treasury and lost the sea. The response from the high nobility is tepid, leaving York with only a core group of noble cavalry. This lack of peerage support forces the Duke to rely on his own private affinity. Why does the road to London suddenly turn cold? Reaching the capital, York finds the city gates barred by royal order, a psychological blow that denies him the resources of the Thames. The Common Council refuses entry, forcing the rebel host to seek another path to power before the king's army can encircle them. York must act quickly to maintain his momentum, as a stalled rebellion is a death sentence in the eyes of the law. This rejection by the city transforms a reformist march into a desperate tactical maneuver. How does the Duke bypass the royal blockade and continue the Dartford Standoff of 1452? Under the cover of a shifting morning mist, York executes a brilliant flanking move, crossing the Thames at Kingston Bridge. He enters the heart of Kent, moving toward the steep ground where he expects the common people to rise and bolster his thin line. The march is grueling, with wagons of black powder struggling through the late winter mud. This successful river crossing allows the Yorkist host to choose the field of battle. What makes the Brent the perfect anvil for York's hammer? The word Brent signifies the steep east hill, a topographical advantage that offers a commanding view of the road from Blackheath. The ground is as smooth as a bowling green, providing clear lanes for the infantry to form their protective shield wall and set their pikes. York anchors his position on this ridge, forcing any royalist charge to move uphill across exposed territory. This choice of terrain offsets the king's numerical superiority and creates a formidable defensive choke point. Where did York find the technology to terrify a king? The Duke brings a massive train of ordnance to the ridge, including an unprecedented concentration of 3,000 specialized gunners. These specialists, drawn from his experiences in the French wars, represent the cutting edge of 15th century military science and logistics. While the royal host relies on traditional levies, York bets his survival on the destructive power of gunpowder and iron. This investment in specialized artillery turns the common heath into a site of modern technological terror. How would the great guns dictate the terms of engagement? Massive bombards and breech-loading fowlers are positioned along the slope, their wrought iron barrels reinforced with heavy rings to prevent fatal explosions. The gunners prepare stone balls and lead shot, creating a killing zone that ensures any frontal assault will result in a bloodbath. Smiths and carpenters work frantically to repair wooden firing platforms shattered by the immense recoil of the heavy pieces. This constant fire and fix cycle keeps the Yorkist line bristling with a threat the nobility cannot ignore. What secret lifeline keeps the rebel camp alive? 7 ships lay anchored on the Thames just beyond the ridge, providing a logistical bridge that the Royal Army cannot easily sever. These vessels carry the bulk of the Army's baggage and the dangerous supplies of saltpeter and charcoal needed to feed the guns. If the standoff turns into an encirclement, the river offers a secure escape route for the Duke and his most valuable commanders. This maritime coordination proves York's mastery of multimodal strategy in a landscape of mud and rain. Who stands against the Duke on the heights of Blackheath? King Henry VI arrives with a host of 20,000 men, representing the full but fractured might of the Lancastrian state. Unlike his warrior father, the king is a man of profound contradictions who hates the very sight of cold steel and drawn longbows. He is surrounded by the Duke of Somerset and a young Queen Margaret, who view York as a traitorous usurper. This massive royal mobilization creates an immediate stalemate between numerical weight and technological precision. How do two divergent personalities collide without a single shot? Henry is described as a monk king, more interested in the endowment of colleges than the administration of justice or the command of pikes. Facing him is the martial duke, a man of high standards and sharp entitlement who believes he alone can save the realm. The tension between the king's pious passivity and York's aggressive reformism creates a political center of gravity that threatens to collapse. This personality clash ensures that any resolution will be both personal and volatile. Who will step into the gap during the Dartford Standoff of 1452 to prevent a civil war? A group of influential bishops and peers, including the young Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, begin to shuttle between the two opposing camps. At this stage, Warwick is a loyal servant of the crown, acting as a bridge to prevent the first blood from being spilled on English soil. The mediators face a desperate dilemma, seeking a compromise that will satisfy York's honor without diminishing royal authority. This intense diplomacy delays the slaughter while the gunners hold their matches. What whispers dominate the king's pavilion during the crisis? Queen Margaret and Somerset argue for a crushing military response, believing that any concession to the Duke will only invite future rebellion. They convince the king that York's reformist letters are a ruse designed to mask a coup and seize the crown itself. Henry wavers, his horror of violence competing with the fierce demands of his advisors to maintain the Lancastrian monopoly of power. This internal factionalism makes the royal camp as dangerous as the bristling ridge of the Brent. Why does the stalemate finally begin to break? Mediators return to York's tent with a promise that seems to grant the Duke his victory over the court favorites. They claim the king has agreed to the arrest of Somerset, ordering him to ward until his failures in France can be investigated. York is a man who believes in the sanctity of a royal word and the honor of his peers. This apparent capitulation by the king provides York with the political victory he craves. How does a master of strategy make a fatal error of trust? Believing the compromise is secure, York orders his 10,000 men-at-arms to disband and return to their homes with their wages. He surrenders the defensive high ground and the protection of his great guns, trusting that the arrest of his rival has already been enacted. It is a moment of profound faith in the ancient structures of medieval law and royal promise. This sudden disarmament leaves the Duke vulnerable and isolated before the royal host. What awaits the Duke inside the king's pavilion at Blackheath? York rides with a minimal escort of heavy cavalry to pay his respects, expecting to find Somerset in chains and his own path to power cleared. He enters the tent with the confidence of a reformer who has saved the realm through restraint and loyalty. The air inside the pavilion is thick with the scent of incense and the quiet tension of a trap finally closing. This lonely ride into the camp seals the Duke's political fate. How does a royal promise turn into a masterclass in betrayal? Instead of a prisoner, York finds Somerset standing proudly at the king's right hand, his influence and favor entirely undiminished by the standoff. The arrest was a ruse, a tactical deception designed to achieve through diplomacy what the royal army might have failed to win on the battlefield. York is immediately seized, his grievances dismissed as the Queen and Somerset reclaim total control over the monarch. This duplicity destroys the last vestige of trust between the two factions. Where does the humiliation of the White Rose end? York is forced to St. Paul's Cathedral for a ritual of public submission before the court and the common people. He takes a solemn oath of allegiance, renouncing his right to ever take up arms or assemble a fellowship. This public perjury is designed to break his image and frame him as a failed rebel in the eyes of the realm. The deeper struggle for the crown, the rising power of the Neville family, and the legends of the White Rose deserve their own episode. Which historical deep dive should we explore next during the Dartford Standoff of 1452? The piece built on the Brent was a structure of sand, ensuring that the next meeting between these rivals would be resolved with axes rather than oaths. If you want to see the mechanisms of power that shaped these dynastic wars, join our community of history enthusiasts for more expert-level research. Subscribe using the QR code visible on your screen to continue the series and never miss a decisive moment in the fight for the crown.